Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's episode 293 of the Audible Farm podcast, and this episode is brought to you by the Fort Dodge Fine Arts Association. The Fort Dodge Fine Arts Association is all about supporting and connecting local artists, musicians, and creators right here in north central Iowa. Head over to fdfineartsassociation.org to find their community calendar packed with upcoming concerts, art shows, theater events, and more. While you're there, check out their podcast, FDT. It's available wherever you listen to podcasts. That's the Fort Dodge Fine Arts Association, celebrating creativity and community in the Fort Dodge area. This week, I'm doing a solo episode. I'm going to be talking about quantifying how many shows you've actually played. Has anybody actually ever done this, or like who's got big numbers, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm just kind of going through recently and doing some of this stuff. So I'll talk about it in the episode. Hopefully this is a fun one for some of you guys.
It's the Audible Farm Podcast with your host, Peter Stockdale.
So I produce a lot of podcasts, and one of the podcasts that I do help produce is a financial podcast. And one of the things they like to talk about is like quantifying what you're doing, so that way you can like track numbers, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm a numbers guy. I kind of always have liked numbers, and to some extent, I don't know. I guess I take their advice and I'll sit down and punch my own money in there on a spreadsheet and see like, oh, how's it actually performing? And you can track it, based on different things, jobs you've had, et cetera, et cetera. But I started like, well, why don't I ever just do this with my shows that I play? See all the different statistics I can pull out of this just for fun, if nothing else. And it's been pretty alarming to actually have gone through and tried to find all of the shows I play. I've done a pretty good job of keeping track of all the shows. I wish I had the sheet here to show everybody, but I've got a folder, basically like just one of these notebook type deals. And I go through and every year I'm just like, here, I played this show. It was over here. It was this, with these people, and this is what was going on. And I try to keep track the best I can of all the shows I've played to some extent. If nothing else, I try to find like a show poster for it or something. When I first started playing music, I was very diligent about it because I thought it was just kind of fun. There's a show poster, you put it in a little folder or something, and you title it the date of the show or whatever, and then you can kind of see who you played with, what was going on, etc. Take a couple little notes down, and boom, there you go. You got some information. But after playing several years, I kind of took a little. It's not like I didn't do it. I just wasn't as adamant about doing it. And then when I started playing more shows, and I actually had to play enough shows where I had to keep a calendar because, at certain times in my life, I was either like going to school or doing guitar lessons or things like that on different days. Just had to have a calendar to make sure I was doing all the stuff I was supposed to be doing. So I was, keeping track of things, but maybe not necessarily as adamantly as I was before. But then eventually finally got to the 3-ring notebook here or whatever, and started going through and tracking them like that. And I have for the last like 3 or 4 years, at least, have every show written down, a fair amount of information about the shows. Sometimes not all the information's there, but it was fun to start making this spreadsheet basically. So I went through and I make this spreadsheet, and this is a numbers thing, but the spreadsheet was based on like the date, who I played the show with, because I've played with like different bands and things like that, and then the venue, and then the location of the venue, and then if I have the information down, I would put like how much money I made or how far I had to drive to get there. And for a long time, and I'll just admit this, I was like playing in bands that didn't really make literally any money. I mean, there's like a whole circuit out there of bands that's just what happens. I mean, if you're popular enough, you can command some money, but it's just tough to get out there and play a hard rock, heavy, kind of punk, whatever, aggressive music and try to make a lot of money on it in a certain scene. And it's not that's just the way it works. Some people are listening to this probably and they're like, what are you talking about? And it's like, well, that's how it is. Like if anything, like, let's say a small show, maybe you get like 30, 40, $50. But if you have 4, 5, 6 members in your band, everybody's getting like $5, so it really doesn't end up being like anything that may even cover your gas or your like drinks for the night or things like that. So it's more of a passion project for anybody. And so there's some shows where maybe I didn't keep track of the money, maybe I got $5, maybe I didn't, I don't know. And I did that for years, playing certain shows, and, I'm okay with it. That's just the nature of the beast when you're in that kind of a thing. Yes, sometimes there are shows where you get hooked up with a bigger band and the place is full and you actually get a cut of the door or whatever agreements, start to be made. And you can actually get some money out of it. But other times, it's a little bit more difficult to get the money out of it. So some of this information, I may or may not actually have. So it's like, I played in this town or I played at this venue, and some of the venues I know where they were at, and some exist, some don't. So you have to like kind of go back and be like, I don't even remember where this was at, because all I have is a venue name to go off of, and it's like in a different town, and you're like, oh crap, I completely forgot I played a show in that town or whatever. But if you can kind of get this spreadsheet going and eventually discern some of this information that's on there, it's kind of fun to sit down and start quantifying things. So I never really kept track of like how many miles did I drive to and from every single show, but it's crazy when you sit down and you look at it, and you can, if you're like good at spreadsheets, you can be like, well, if I was at this venue, it was this many miles because the round trip would be this according to what my phone says. So you can kind of just guesstimate how many miles you drove to every show, and it's wild to sit down and see like, on average, I drive this many miles to a show, and get some given years, it's way more than others, and some it's far less. But it's kind of crazy to see what even still the overall averages of this. So you can pull the averages out by year, you can pull them out overall, and like, oh, the whole entire time I've ever played music, this is what the averages are. Or you can look at like, when I played with this band, I made this much money. When I played with that band, I never made any money. And when I played with this band, et cetera, et cetera. And recently I started trying to get a little bit, more in depth with some of these things, trying to figure out, like, are there certain venues that you get more tips at or things like that? Just trying to figure out exactly what's going on, generally speaking, just money-wise. But I never really, again, put it into a spreadsheet and really looked at it. I kind of had ideas, but I wasn't really 100% sure if there was any correlation to anything that was going on. But there were a lot of years I never really kept track of that. If you get $5 in tips, just like whatever, you just throw it in your pocket. But there's times where I did keep track. So this is not a perfect science. There's going to be shows that I've missed. The reason for this is crazy. So like Three Finger Betty, I play music with them. I've been playing music with them almost for 10 years now. And to sit and think about like, well, we used to play all these shows and those shows, and there was a list of them all. It's like, well, you can just go back through your Facebook and look it up, or go back through your Instagram. Well, somebody hacked into somebody's account, and we ended up losing our Facebook page, with a whole pile of followers on it. And it was horrible. It was horrible. If you go back far enough in the podcast, there's episodes where I talked about that with different people through that time frame. Gotta be careful. You can't let people hack into your stuff. You can't just like log into things you think or look good or whatever. Like, you have to keep track of that stuff. So we lost like basically all the information. So like one of the things I had was I had a lot of information already, kept track of like, show flyers and things like that. So when we rebuilt the page, I had stuff to kind of just backload into it over the course of, maybe a couple weeks. I was just like, well, here's all the show posters that we did in like 2016 or whatever, or 2015 or whatever it happens to be. So, there are some of the things there, but like, we've played shows without show posters, or ones where like I couldn't find them online. So we just never ended up putting one in a folder or whatever. I've always kind of been a digital hoarder in some sense, and I still have most of the old digital files I have. It's crazy because I'm trying to find like some stuff that I remember having and I just couldn't find it. But this comes down to just trying to find stuff. And it's so crazy when I think about like how deeply I've organized some of the stuff for certain like bands and things like that I've been in, or like, even businesses, I've kind of given them some help where it's like, this is kind of how I would organize this. It would just be the easiest for everyone to access it, blah, blah, blah. It's the most secure because there's one blah, blah, blah. So like I got a little fancy with Google Drive for a while, and I get it like, ooh, Google Drive, super fancy or whatever. But I figured out how to do some really fun things with it. And I went back in and found some of the old shows that I had played where I just stored piles of information in the Google Drive, with some documents and things like that, where it's just like, oh, I didn't have any record of this show that like at all. So I'm adding it to the list now. And there's, I mean, like I said, there's years and years and years worth of information in here that I had completely forgot about. There's a whole bunch of stuff in here that I completely forgot existed in the first place. So, that's shows, that's posters, it's crazy to go back through and look at some of these things. And that's something that's been kind of humbling through this whole process, is trying to quantify everything and figure it out. And again, it's not perfect. I don't have the numbers down exactly. I don't know exactly what they are, but, I have sat down and pulled some numbers together. And I've recently found some information where like, oh, I forgot I kept track of all this stuff and it's in here. I need to go find, a way to like put this back into the, spreadsheet that I have. So these numbers that I have, even as of today, making this episode, aren't going to be perfect, but it's crazy to sit down and think about like having all this information, down somewhere. We would like audio record most shows and do things like that, even just to have like some weird record of this to make sure that we had everything. And to go out and try and find all of this was not easy in any capacity. And it's crazy to sit down and look at all these shows where it's like, I did all of these shows. I really can't believe I did all these shows, including like the one solo show I did. And it's funny because if you go look at the year, that's the only show I ever got paid to do that year. So it's kind of, according to my records, again, this could be something where I just didn't have records for some of the other stuff. But, there's some years where it's like, oh man, I remember playing like this many shows, and you look back and you're like, actually it was way less than that. There's other years where I look at it and I'm like, oh man, I remember playing that many shows, and it's actually way more than that. So some years, I look at that and it's crazy. And there's different schools of thoughts on like how many shows you should play, or like, is it really worth sitting down quantifying any of this stuff? Because it's all about the love of the music, and it really is. This is all about doing this because this is what I want to do. This is, for me right now in my life, this is perfect. I like doing this stuff. It's very enjoyable and entertaining. And yeah, sometimes it's a little bit more work than it is pleasure. But at the same time, in the broad aspect of everything, it's just such a good, positive thing, going out and playing music and enjoying yourself in this capacity. So, I don't know. I don't really know if I want to just give these numbers out because they might not be correct. And I'm not going to give out, dollar figures or anything like that, because I don't want people to really like judge one way or the other, because everybody, is in a different bracket. Like I said, if you play this type of music, you might not get paid very much money. If you play that type of music, you might get paid a fair amount of money. And if you play this type of music, whatever they happen to be. So, different genres pay more. If you're a singer-songwriter, you're going to get paid more, than if you're just a hired hand on, same thing with like if you're in a certain type of, rock band, you're probably not going to get paid as much depending on venue and location, etc. And sometimes it's like, well, we can play here if you'll play there. And then you find a way to get everybody to get paid at least enough to cover their gas back home. There's a lot of those types of shows in here. But from what I have right now, it's 427 shows that I can find, before I found more in a different list online that I'd created. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's kind of crazy to sit down and think like, before I know it, I'm going to be closing in on playing 500 shows. I feel like, and again, this doesn't count. Like I played a handful of shows in high school, and then those aren't on here either, and maybe a couple right after I graduated, and that was it. Like, maybe I could say like there were 10 shows that I probably played throughout my high school time and playing music with a different band, which I should go find those dates too, honestly, put them in here. But it is kind of fun to sit down and look at the numbers that I have so far. Like the 1 year I could have swore that, Three Finger Betty had played, like I swear we played like 50 shows 1 year. But you go back and look and it's like, well, actually the number is like, let's see here. The number's actually about like 42, which, like isn't that far off, but, And a lot of those aren't included in this list here. So there are, times where you remember things differently. And when you go back through and you look at some of these shows you played, it's also kind of crazy to have some notes that are written down with it. Like, oh, this was the show that Three Finger Betty opened up for Night Demon, and it's like, at the time I was like, didn't quite grasp what Night Demon was. I'd listened to it beforehand. I watched the music videos. It was a short amount of time to enjoy their music before I got to, open up for them at a show. And then, by the time they toured back through and you open up for them again, it's just like, oh, okay, this is actually pretty fun or whatever, So there's some of those moments. There's moments on here where it's like I have this written down and it's like, I don't know why I wrote some of these notes. One of the ones on here is like I opened up for Chuck Mosley back in 2016 with Three Finger Betty. And he's the ex-singer for Bad Brains, I believe. Yeah, and that was a sobering thing because that was like right around the time I was like recording episodes for my podcast to like launch it. And I was like, oh, this would be a great one to like record. And he was just kind of standoffish and just I don't want to say not approachable. It was just an odd interaction overall. And I was like, I'm new to this and this is too difficult. I can't handle interviewing people. And so I didn't end up interviewing. But I sat and talked with him for a while. And to make a long story short, he ended up passing away later on tour, which is, kind of a bombshell to just drop in here. But, there's stuff like that where it's just like you go back through and look and you're like, wow, don't take anything for granted, the first time I ever played at the Rockin' Picnic, that was a big deal to me. It was a really big deal to me. And, I don't know, like that's in here. I have that, like, there's things like that I noted down, opening up for Bewitcher, opening up for the Vicious Rumors, opening up for, Unleash the Archers and Stryker. Oh my gosh, the Stryker show was just absolutely insane. That was another one where like I spent months and months listening to Stryker before I went and, they opened up, but they sounded so good. It was like listening to the album. I was mind blown. That was insane. Playing some of these shows with Unity, that was really fun. A lot of them we were opening up for people or playing festivals. Got to open up for Raven one time with Unity. That was really fun. I got to open up for Raven again, I think, with Three Finger Betty, which is like also crazy. They came back around on another tour and opened up for them with a different band. There's ones on here where I ran sound or I was at a jam band or that's something else I didn't quantify. I've never kept track of the jams that I go to. I'm kind of sad I don't and haven't. Having all this information, how crazy would it be to see how many jams I went to? But I don't always play at every jam. And sometimes that's on purpose. I don't know. I'm just not feeling it, I guess. And I just don't play at some jam nights. And so, maybe that's why I haven't like kept track of them or whatever. But it would be absolutely mind-blowing to have that number too, because that number, for a while, that one had to have been 50 plus a year because I was going to the Barnum Jams every week. So, I don't know. I just think about that kind of stuff where, going to jam nights. This isn't really like, hopefully this is entertaining for people, but like I have like the first show I opened up for the Rumors on with Three Finger Betty. And that was something that like, we recently played another show with the Rumors, and it's crazy to think like, oh, I've been playing shows with the Rumors for playing in a band that has opened up for the Rumors almost once a year for like 7 years. And that's super crazy to sit down and look at that stuff, like online live streams and things like that. I have one here where like I played bass guitar at this show, which is, something I haven't always kept track of again, but that's something with Three Finger Betty for a while. I was doing a little bit of that, just kind of moonlighting as a bassist, more live streaming, playing for the Rumors, running sound for people, playing Monsters Ball. That was cool. Some of these are just like, it's funny because it just says like private party. And like some of these ones I don't have any information on. And the assumption is that like, it's probably in Fort Dodge, but some of it is like, I can go back in my like booking calendar on my phone and just like scroll backwards and be like, oh, there it is. It was actually at this location. I have an address in here. So like, again, I have the information for some of these, but they're like, it's all over the place. And this is the first time I've ever tried to like put it all in one location. And it's really fun to see, the very few like random other people's shows that show up where it's like, oh, I forgot I played a show with, Scott Kirkhart. What was up with that? And you look at it and you're like, oh, that was at Ragbri. That's pretty crazy. So, the usually like once a year or so that I get to like play at a jam night as like part of the house band, those types of things. Opening up for Lily Winwood. That's another crazy one. I got another note here opening up for the Rumors. Private party at this location. Some of the ones I wrote down because I thought it was just kind of fun. This is opening up for Josh Turner. That's pretty cool to some of you country folk out there. Some of these ones I just have like, I don't know. I just don't have the name down for it correctly. But or other ones it's just like I'm guessing, or this one it's like private event at this location for this company. And it's really kind of crazy to see like the different places I've played. And I guess just generally how much things have changed from year to year to year. And that even goes for like and this isn't even considered like a super long amount of time, but like, I've been playing with Jesse, singer-songwriter Jesse Wilson since 2020 was the first show I ever played with him. And so that's about 6 years, and it's just kind of weird to see like how things have changed there. At least like the shows that I used to play with him were always like really in a tight-knit circle. Everything was always kind of really consistent, and then eventually it starts to get all over the map, and it's like, like I think that's just people like learning business. The demand changes. Like I have something else down to talk about here. Like this weekend, I'm playing a show in St. Cloud, Minnesota with him, and then the next night I'm playing a show in Des Moines, Iowa. So I've got a little bit of driving to do, but it's going to be fun. And it's just kind of crazy to, even with Three Finger Betty, where it's like some of these things, like I said, I don't have information down, but it's like there were some years where it's like, oh, I played with 50 shows or whatever, and we ended up making a couple bucks. And then you got to go back through and look, and it's like, oh yeah, okay. So as a band, we made $100, so we each got 25 for this show. The rest of the year, we got 0, and you get to find out like what show you were at that, like, this was the place we played, and then it's like, I wonder if we ever played there again. And you go back through, and you're like, oh, we did right here, and we actually got, the same amount of money or whatever, But then there's different places where, like, again, sometimes you have agreements with places where, you get paid a percentage of the bar, and, for a while, Three Finger Betty, like, even if we made money as a band, we would like put it back into the band purse, so that way we could like buy t-shirts and then sell the t-shirts and then put that money back in the band purse, and we would just eventually have money to do things. And, so we did that for a while as well. And like, so maybe we did make money and I don't have any record of it, So there are a lot of these things that I just have lacking information, but it's crazy to see how many shows you play in a year, The year I played the most shows, it looks like I played 81 shows. Again, I don't have, this does not have every single piece of information in there. So, this is just kind of the guesstimation right now. But yeah, the miles per show, round trip average, and again, this is just all the information I have. In 2018, my average round trip miles per show was 253 miles per show. I played 26 shows. What kind of numbers are those? And you go back through and you're like, yeah, that's right. You play Chicago, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, you do that 2 or 3 times and not make a whole pile of money, and then it's just kind of makes sense, I guess. Let's see here: Minneapolis, Chicago, Kansas, Illinois. So yeah, there was just a handful of them that really just kind of skewed the whole thing, really was what it was. But, that's the kind of funny thing when you sit down and you look at, like, I made a spreadsheet like this so I could look at the numbers and I want to see the averages. But then when you extrapolate it over all the years and everything that you have, my average show, I drive about 100 miles round trip, which I remember like talking to somebody like, do you get paid for playing music? And it's like, yeah, depending on what I'm playing. But like, I can see right here what the average money per show I make is. And it's, I don't know, it's okay. It's not like a bazillion billion dollars. It's definitely quantifiable, but like at the same time, if somebody said this is what I'll pay you per show, and now you get to look at like, if this came down to me like a business and only business, and this wasn't something that I actually wanted to do, this is a lot of work. Again, when somebody asks me once, do you get paid to play music? It's like, yeah, but then when you break it down for them, it's like, but I got to like go home and get all my stuff, and I got to pack it all up, and then I got to drive to the place, and I got to be there this many hours early so I can load in, and then I got to put all my stuff up, and then the sound guy comes in and he does the sound, and then you have to wait for everybody to come in, and then it's your turn to play. So then you play for, depending on what kind of band, anywhere from like an hour to 3 or 4 hours. And then when you're done, everybody leaves, and you think you're a superhero because you played music, and they're all gone, and you just have to like load everything back into your car and drive home. And so we're talking like multiple hours before, 4 hours plus of playing, and then multiple hours afterwards. And when you think about like every show you've played, even if you play like a 2 or 3 hour show, driving some numbers like this, it's like, okay, so there's 2 hours there, 3 hour show, 1 hour before show time if you're cutting it close. So we're already up to 6 hours. You got 2 hours back home. So there's 8 hours. It's a full job. And then when you break it down by like dollars per hour, it's really like, that's not really a whole lot of money. And then you think like, and then I had to eat food, and then I had to pay for gas, and then okay, so like, again, if this came down to me and was just presented to me like, this is your business proposition, I would be like, I don't know. But again, I stated earlier, like, this for me in my life is this is what I like to do. It's not like I would be doing worse things if this wasn't what I would be doing. But I don't really know if I'd be doing anything better than this. So I like playing music. Yes, some years it came down to literally making, I have 1 year here where I made $1.55 each show. There's a fun number I'll throw out at you. But again, this is like, some of these ones, no, we didn't take any money, or like some of the ones like you just might not make much money. Or if you get paid, it's like, yes, we got as a band $100. We're going to buy shirts with this. So like nobody actually made anything, there's no money in my pocket, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But the band now has shirts and whatever. So like, it is kind of fun to sit down and look at this. It's also kind of fun to think like, I can't believe I've drove this many miles playing, just to and from playing music. So when it comes down to quantifying all this stuff, I guess has anybody else ever done anything like this? Does anybody else have anything like written down? Do you have anything quantified in some capacity? I know that like the people that do this big time definitely have something like this. And the reason is, they make enough money to pay taxes on this stuff. So, but I guess in a business sense, that could benefit you in some capacities. Thank you, accounting degree. So, yeah, I don't know. I think about some of this stuff. Has anybody ever like tried to look at the numbers of how many shows they played? Anybody got any, like, we played way more shows than that. That's not even 81 shows. Isn't even really a lot of shows when you think about it or whatever, like, I don't know. Is this something that like anybody really like wants to do? I'd love to just sit down and talk numbers like this for a while. Again, I got more numbers to plug in here. I'm going to try and find some even older numbers just to goof around. But yeah, I think this is something that's really kind of fun. Miles per show. I can tell you that number. That's a pretty hilarious statistic to tell you how many miles per show. But yeah, this has to be something you love. I mean, I'm not out there making piles and piles of money. You could make more money being a singer-songwriter and just playing solo stuff than I could ever make as a hired gun, assisting musicians and or playing in an original rock punk band. It's just the way that it works. So there are ways to make more money doing this. But again, this has to be something you love, because this is not going to be something where it's like, I make enough money to live off of this and retire comfortably. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. I don't know. But again, it kind of depends on who you are and what your gig is. So speaking again, this weekend, why do we do the things we do? Well, I'm playing a show in Minnesota with Jesse, and I'm playing a show down in Des Moines with Three Finger Betty. And that is going to be a long one. It's going to be 4 hours for me up to Minnesota, and then 4 hours back home, and then 2 hours down to Des Moines the next day, and then 2 hours back home. So a lot of driving this weekend is going to be had. So hopefully if you're listening to this and you're driving, Cheers. Keep your eyes on the road. Drive safe. And yeah, it's fun to see some of the stuff you see out there on the road. I don't remember if I even talked about this. This one time I saw an asteroid like flying out of the sky, and I'm not talking about like a little one. It was absolutely massive, and it was crazy because we were driving home from a show in different cars, taking different routes, and Jesse saw it too. So yeah, there's some fun stuff like that. I like, I like hanging out on the road. I like listening to podcasts. I like calling people on the phone, talking to them on the drive home. So nothing beats it. It's just, I don't know what else I would rather be doing. So I don't know if I have anything else like explicitly here that I really want to talk about. No, I'll see you guys in the outro. All right, well, there you go. 293 solo episode. Thanks to everybody that listened to last week's episode with Justin Kramer. It went off like gangbusters. Lots of interaction from lots of different avenues. I'm trying to keep up with it. It's not like there's piles and piles of it and I can't keep up with it. But when you do this all day long, it just kind of drags on you in your personal time. So thank you guys. Hopefully I'm interacting with everybody enough. If you leave a comment somewhere, I'm trying my best to reach out to all of them. The AI episode, it's kind of funny. It had more. The solo episodes always do a little bit better for audio listeners. Don't know why. But yeah, that one did fair audio listens and video listens, not so much. But, I was posting little questions about it online, and a lot of people with a lot of opinions. Ultimately, I think we all decided playing music is the important thing. But yes, everybody's opinions, I guess, hold some weight. Everybody's correct. Nobody's ever wrong. Gold sticker for everyone. Congratulations. But yeah, last week's episode was awesome. This one's pretty good. I hope that you guys enjoy the solo episodes. I'm going to bring in somebody next week, hopefully. Had a couple people that I've kind of just haven't opened up their messages yet, and I've been trying to like interact with them over the last month to get them on the podcast. We'll get them on here, I promise. So yeah, everything Audible Farm can be found at audiblefarm.com. Otherwise, shop.audiblefarm.com for t-shirts and hoodies. I sold a hoodie recently. Threw in some stickers for fun too, because why not? But yeah, I did have a purchase through the shop, believe it or not. So if anybody wants to buy one through the shop, go for it. Otherwise, just hit me up in person. I can drop one off to you. But yes, those are for sale as well. You're looking for any of the Jesse stuff, go to jessewilsonmusic.com. Three Finger Betty on Facebook and Instagram for all that stuff. Those were the big ones I talked about. I also played some shows with Clint Riedel. I'm still playing some shows with Clint Riedel, just not as many. And when you ask me how many, I could actually tell you now, because I kept track of all that stuff. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the episode. Hopefully next week I'll actually have a guest, and hopefully you'll tune in next week. Thanks everybody. Peace.